For 3 long years, the small wooden house at the edge of Dry Creek Valley had learned the sound of fear. It creaked under the weight of winter winds and summer heat, but nothing shook it like the heavy boots that crossed its threshold every night after sundown. Clara May learned to count time not by seasons or sunsets, but by bruises, yellow ones fading into purple, purple into blue, and then replaced again before they could fully disappear. She had once believed the West was a land of freedom, of white skies and new beginnings. Instead, it became a cage built from fists, whiskey breath, and silence. Her husband, Earl Whitman, had not always been this way, or at least that was the lie she told herself when the nights grew unbearable. At first he had been charming, a respected foreman on the Barrow Ranch, a man others laughed with and trusted, but doors close differently than they open, and once Clara became his wife, the world narrowed to 4 walls and a single rule: endure. Earl's anger came without warning. Sometimes it was dinner cooked too slow, sometimes a look held too long, sometimes no reason at all. He never apologized, he never remembered, and the next morning, he would ride off like nothing had happened, leaving Clara to sweep broken plates and hide her swelling face before the neighbors might pass. No one asked questions in Dry Creek. The West taught people to mind their own suffering. Clara stopped hoping someone would notice. Hope, she learned, only made the pain sharper. Instead, she focused on surviving and on breathing quietly, on keeping her eyes low, on pretending the woman in the cracked mirror was someone else entirely. There were nights she thought of running. She imagined slipping away before dawn, taking nothing but the clothes on her, back and heading east where no one knew her name. But Earl always reminded her she had nowhere to go. Her parents were buried back in Missouri, and the town knew Earl better than they knew her. "You leave," he once growled, pressing her face to the floor, "and I'll drag you back by your hair." After that, she stopped dreaming of escape. Dreams were dangerous things. They made the beatings feel like betrayals. On one cold autumn evening, as the sky burned orange and purple behind the hills, Clara moved slower than usual. Her ribs ached from the night before, and every breath felt like it scraped against something broken inside her. Earl hadn't come home yet, which meant she had a small mercy of time. She stirred beans on the stove and listened to the wind push dust against the windows. That was when she heard it, the sound of a horse pulling up outside. Not Earl's. Earl's horse always stomped impatiently, sensing its rider's temper. This horse stood calm, steady. A knock followed, firm but respectful, and Clara froze. No one ever knocked. Her heart hammered as she wiped her hands on her apron and opened the door just enough to see a tall figure silhouetted by the dying light. He wore a weathered duster and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, his face shadowed but calm. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet and measured, like a man who didn't need to raise it to be heard. "Evenin', ma'am. Name's Luke Calder. My horse threw a shoe a mile back. I was hoping to ask for a bit of water, maybe directions to the nearest smith." Clara hesitated. Earl hated strangers, but something in the cowboy's eyes, steady, watchful, kind, made her step aside. "You can water your horse out back," she said softly. Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. Luke nodded in thanks and led his horse around the house. Clara watched from the doorway, a strange tightness in her chest she couldn't name. When he returned, she noticed how carefully his gaze moved, not lingering, not judging but noticing. The bruise on her cheekbone, half hidden by her hair. The way she flinched when a board creaked. He didn't ask about it, but something in his expression changed just slightly, like a storm cloud forming far on the horizon. "Much obliged," he said. "I won't be long." And yet, for the first time in 3 years, Clara felt like someone had truly seen her. She didn't know then that this quiet cowboy would become the turning point of her life. She didn't know that his boots crossing her threshold would challenge the fear that had ruled her for so long. All she knew was that as Luke Calder stood there beneath the wide western sky, something fragile stirred inside her. Not hope, not yet, but the memory of what it felt like to be human. And inside the house, as the sun sank low and Earl's return grew closer with every passing minute, Clara realized one terrifying truth. When Earl walked through that door, everything would change. The moment stretched thin as wire after Luke Calder finished watering his horse. Clara stood at the doorway, hands folded tight in her apron, listening to the distant hum of cicadas and the soft clink of the cowboy adjusting his saddle. Time felt dangerous now. Earl would return soon. He always did, like a storm that never missed its mark. Clara's eyes kept flicking down the dirt road, her body already preparing for the familiar dread. Luke noticed it. He didn't say anything at first, but when he stepped closer, his boots stopped well short of her threshold, as if he respected some invisible boundary. "You look like you've had a hard day, ma'am," he said quietly. His voice wasn't pitying. It wasn't curious. It was simply true. Clara swallowed. Words crowded her throat, but fear pushed them back down. "Every day's hard out here," she replied, forcing a weak smile. Luke nodded slowly. "That's true," he said. "But some days shouldn't leave marks." Before Clara could respond, the sound of hooves thundered down the road. Her breath caught. She knew that rhythm. Earl Whitman was coming home. Luke turned just as the rider appeared. Broad-shouldered and sharp-eyed, reins pulled tight as if the world itself offended him, Earl dismounted hard, boots hitting the ground with the force of a warning. His gaze snapped from Clara to Luke, narrowing instantly. "Who the hell are you?" Earl barked. Luke didn't flinch. He straightened, calm as still water. "Luke Calder. Just passing through. My horse needed water." Earl's jaw tightened. He looked at Clara like she'd committed a crime. "You invitin' strangers now?" He growled. Clara felt the familiar knot twist in her stomach. "He just asked for—" Earl cut her off with a sharp step forward. Luke moved faster. Not aggressively. Just enough to put himself between them. "She didn't do nothing wrong," Luke said evenly. The air shifted. Earl's eyes burned. Men in Dry Creek didn't challenge him, especially not in front of his wife. Earl laughed, low, ugly, and dangerous. "This ain't your concern, cowboy." Luke met his stare without blinking. "Abuse always is." Silence fell like a gunshot. Clara's heart slammed so hard she thought she might faint. Earl's hand curled into a fist. For a moment, Clara was sure blood would spill. Luke's or hers. Instead, Earl stepped back, smiling coldly. "You best be on your way," he said, "before you get hurt." Luke didn't move right away. He looked at Clara, really looked at her. And something passed between them, not a promise. Not yet, but recognition. "I'll be heading into town tomorrow," Luke said finally. "If you need help." Dry Creek ain't as quiet as it pretends. Earl scoffed. "Get gone." Luke tipped his hat to Clara, mounted his horse, and rode off without looking back. The dust settled. The silence screamed. The door barely closed before Earl's hand struck Clara across the face. She went down hard, the world exploding into white pain. "You embarrassin' me?" he roared. Clara tasted blood. She didn't cry. She learned long ago tears only fed him. The beating that night was worse than most. Earl was fueled by humiliation, by the thought that another man had seen what belonged to him. When it was over, Clara lay curled on the floor, ribs screaming, vision blurred. Earl passed out drunk in the chair, snoring like nothing had happened. Outside, the moon rose high, indifferent and cold. Clara didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling and thought of Luke's words. Abuse always is. No one had ever said that aloud before. The next morning, Earl left early, still angry, warning her not to leave the house. As his horse disappeared down the road, Clara stood shaking in the doorway. Every instinct told her to stay, to survive quietly, but something else, something fragile yet fierce, had woken up inside her. She packed nothing. She wrapped her bruised ribs tight, covered her face with a shawl, and stepped onto the road toward town. Every step felt like betrayal and freedom at the same time. Dry Creek buzzed with the usual noise, wagons, voices, but Clara felt invisible moving through it. She spotted Luke outside the blacksmith's shop, talking softly to the smith while his horse rested nearby. When he saw her, surprise flickered across his face, followed by something steadier, respect. She stopped a few feet away, hands trembling. "You said town ain't quiet," she whispered. Luke nodded. "Not when someone's brave enough to speak." Tears burned her eyes, but she held them back. "I don't know how to be brave," she said. Luke's voice softened. "Then borrow mine for now." Behind them, a shadow stretched long across the dirt road. Earl had returned early, and he had followed her. And this time, The West was about to witness what happened when silence finally broke.